Radio.com.
This is The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio. Radio the way it should be heard. And now, Mr. Neely Fuller.
If you do not understand white supremacy, which is racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. Only confuse you. Only confuse you.
Welcome to TalkTainmentRadio.com. We go where you go, the world's greatest radio. You are in touch with the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. I am the co-host, Mr. Bobby, and this is radio the way it should be heard. We have an interesting topic that we will share with you. In the meantime, if you would like to get in contact with the show, this is the number that you use, 1-877-932-9766. Yes, it is a working number. That is the number you call. Again, 1-877-932-9766. Now, if you would like to view us and hear us on TV, you can go to the YouTube channel, type in the word Talktainment, and then scroll down and type in the word radio, and then scroll again and type in Talktainment number 2, and you are there. While you are there, hit the subscribe and like button. Also, you can, if you want to email me, you can, or Gmail, that is, the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY @gmail.com. And you can do this one. To hear the entire program live, you can go to facebook.com/Talktainment, and you are there. But we would like for you to use this. Just go to the TalkTainmentRadio.com homepage, click on programs, and you're there. Hit listen live is what you want to do, and you're right there. You don't have to do anything else. Subscribe and like button there. Okay. I think that's all out the way. Don't forget to donate. Yeah, don't forget that. There will be a special announcement this hour and next hour concerning that. Okay. The interesting topic today is going to be the counter-racist codified response to the government shutdown. Now, I need you to keep in mind that when Mr. Fuller addresses your question, he will address it in a codified counter-racist way. You got to keep that in mind. I think some people have gotten off that way, but this is where the focus is, a counter-racist codified response to whatever we are going to discuss or whatever your questions are. Make sure that they are lined up like that. Now, with that being said, let me present to some and introduce to others, if this is the first time, Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. Mr. Fuller, good morning.
Good morning.
And how are you on this Wednesday, the 23rd, 2019?
I'm still learning.
You are still learning. Okay, we have garnered a topic, the counter-racist codified response to the shutdown. But before we get into that, I know that you use or look at a lot of publications, news. I know you're very astute with the Washington Post and other publications that you use. But have you seen or anything that perked your interest that you would like to open up the introduction to the program with?
Well, nothing except just the usual news and the usual things that are going on throughout the world. Because I always take the world view when you talk about racism, because it's no way to have a perspective without doing that. That is correct. And I think that is constructive. And so you look at all of the details. You don't miss the details of what's going on in different places, even the smallest towns and villages and whatnot, but also keeping your mind on the big picture and what has to be done on the grand scale. And for sure, with the focus being on what an individual person should be, in my opinion, thinking about and speaking about and acting on a daily basis, minute by minute, wherever he or she happens to be, with the focus being on just 2 words, you might say, or you might say 3 words: constructive problem solving. That's just about it, because that's what is really needed and has been needed all along. It's not that complicated. Constructive problem solving should be what a person wakes up with every morning and goes to bed with every night, wherever he or she might be. And, of course, the major problem that we should be dealing with, because you can't solve any other problems without doing that when it comes to people, and that's the problem of racism, that we sometimes call white supremacy. You have to replace that problem with a problem-less society, social system throughout the world. And if you're going to replace one system that's a problem with a better system, you evaluate what that system is that you're replacing. And if it's racism, which is designed to mistreat people, well, then you replace any system that's designed to mistreat people with a better system, and that better system would be presumably a system of justice, which means guaranteeing that no person is mistreated and guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help in all areas of activity, 24/7, without exception.
Okay. With that being said, Mr. Fuller, last week, and also, I believe it was also this week, Robert De Niro, actor, called President Trump a racist. Earlier this week, Bernie Sanders, independent representative, also called the president a racist. In counter-racist codified way, does it surprise you that they or others also have called the president a racist? And what does that mean in regards to how are we, as victims of this mistreatment, to respond to that?
We just listen to it. First of all, you listen to what is being said, which is the codified procedure for everything.
Mm-hmm.
If a person is saying something, you don't look at who's saying it first.
Mm-hmm.
That's secondary. Look at what is being said, and then think in terms of the question, what does that mean? What you want to get it straight, what it means when a certain person says a certain thing, whomever that person may be. And the only person who can answer that question would be, when they use a word, calling a person a racist, you have to find out from that person what that means, and then you have follow-up questions. What should be done about it, if anything, or whether or not a person should be a racist. First of all, what is a racist? What does a racist do? Should a racist be doing what a racist does? And then you follow suit in a number of questions so that you get what? Focus and clarity from that person's point of view. Because not everybody who uses a particular word mean the same thing or have a prescription for it. If it's something that needs to be corrected, if there's pointing out something that is incorrect and they think it needs to be corrected, you want to ask questions about all of that. So just listening to it on the surface is not adequate. You just listen to it and say, well, it looks like one person is calling another person a name. Okay, what does that name mean? What are you supposed to do as a result of that? Because everything comes down to what are you going to do, not what the situation is. That's important because you have to analyze what the situation is. But what does the average person listening to this supposed to do? What am I supposed to do when I hear that? When I hear someone put a label on someone? Okay, and I'm not the one who's putting a label on the person. So then I will ask the person who is using the term, first of all, does this involve me? Am I supposed to do something when I hear you say that? What am I supposed to do when I hear you say that about somebody else? And then you might have 3 or 4 dozen questions after that.
Okay.
Why? Because all problems, if it is a problem, are solved through what? The process of questions and
Question and answers. Yes, sir. Okay, 1-877-932-9766. We are speaking with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr., and he is addressing the question, what the counter-racist codified response to the government shutdown, and he has introduced the codified protocol in addressing that. Let's go to the phone lines. All right, caller, you are on with Mr. Fuller. What is your question, please?
Hi, Mr. Bobby. Good morning, Mr. Fuller. This is Reggie from Charlotte, North Carolina. Mr. Fuller, black female and California Senator Kamala Harris recently announced that she was going to run for U.S. President for 2020. I just want to get your opinion. Do you think that white supremacy is ready to select another black person to be the face of the presidency? Why or why not?
Oh, I don't know, because I only know that if and when it happens, doesn't happen. I can't predict what the white supremacists have in mind from day to day, but I try to. But it's no way, I don't think, to reliably do that. But if they do it, then you can start examining why they did it, because white supremacists always do what they do in order to give strength to the system of white supremacy. That's just counter-racist logic. If you're a racist, anything that you do is going to give strength to the racist system. That's what you have in mind, no matter how it looks on the surface. So you always keep that in mind. So any move that they make, if the person is a racist. Now, if the person is not a racist, then that's a different story. If a person is a counter-racist, meaning they don't believe in racism, but they do believe in justice, then that's completely different. But you always suspect in a racist system, any move that a white person makes, and that white person may be a racist, is to give strength to the system of white supremacy, no matter how it looks on the surface.
Okay, but how does that address the fact that Kamala Harris has announced that she is going to be a candidate for the president to run against President Trump? I guess I missed it or didn't understand your response or your codified response to the caller's question.
Oh, well, Ms. Harris is a person classified as non-white, correct?
Okay, yes, sir.
Okay, so she gives her own explanation about why she's doing it, I guess, if you're a candidate running for office. So you just take her reasons for doing what she's doing as being the reasons for doing what she's doing.
Okay.
But whether or not white people, those who believe in racism, will help her to do it, and for what purpose, that will all play out as evidence. It'll be self-evident when it happens. You won't know until that happens.
Okay.
But actually, any non-white person can say that they plan on doing anything.
Okay.
But white people are going to get involved in it.
All right.
world dominated by white supremacists. So therefore, it comes out it's just going to have an effect of ending white supremacy, or it's just going to be maintained through some other disguise like it has been.
Okay, I think I understand it. Regardless of who it is, we still have to remain in that counter-racist, codified way so that we can understand or make clear what is going on based on what they said, whoever they are in this, and whoever made the statement, and in this case it was Kamala Harris, who indicated that she's going to run, take a stab at running for president. But we, as victims, always have to stay in that counter-racist, codified way so that we can respond logically to whatever's being said. Would that be correct?
Well, that's correct. In other words, the position of a victim of racism should be, according to counter-racist logic, it's not over until it's over.
Okay.
In other words, you don't pay much attention to anything that's going on except when you get up in the morning, does racism still exist? That's the question. And if the answer is yes, it's just like nothing has been done.
Okay.
I mean, that's rock solid. I mean, you wake up. Otherwise, you don't get on that hobby horse of your emotions going up and down, year after year, week after week, month after month, decade after decade, and you might say that you're jerking yourself around.
Okay.
When you're in that type of mode.
Okay.
You wake up every morning if you're a victim of racism, and the counter-racist logic is, does racism still exist
That's the
on
question.
this planet?
Yes, sir. Okay.
And if the answer is yes, zero is what you sent on. Nothing has been done because it still exists.
Okay, got it. TalkTainMeRadio.com is a 24/7, no-charge, worldwide broadcasting facility with hosts delivering on various topics such as news, lifestyle, sports, law, health, wellness, religion, and politics. Now, here's one that I'm going to share with you, and if you missed it last night, you really missed it, and it is the Quay Morgan Hill Show. I'm here to tell you that show is completely outstanding, and if you haven't heard it, you should hear that. That young lady and her guests really whip it up. I mean, in a very good way, very positive way. That show, the Quay Morgan Hill Show, and all other shows that Talktainment Radio has to offer, they're really all fantastic. But this one, since I'm highlighting it, check it out, the Quay Morgan Hill Show. As a matter of fact, all the shows are exclusive. All these shows are exclusive to TalkTainmentRadio.com, and all you have to do, really, is go to the TalkTainmentRadio.com homepage and click on programs, and there is a list of all the shows that we have, and I'm here to tell you, it is really good. And they didn't tell me to say that either. It's really good. You owe it to yourself to do that. From TalkTainmentRadio.com, that is radio the way it should be heard. My name is Mr. Bobby. I am the co-host on the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., and today's topic for January the 23rd is the counter-racist codified response to the government shutdowns. And Mr. Fuller has been addressing that in a codified way. You got to remember, we have to stay in that mode. He just mentioned, when you wake up, you ask that question, is the problem of racism solved? And if the answer is no, then you have to know what to do, understand what to do, and then even be codified in your response. And Mr. Fuller will speak more on it, but right now we're going to go to the phone lines. Caller, what is your question for Mr. Neely Fuller Jr.?
How you doing, Mr. Fuller? This is Mr. Eric Goodrum from Cleveland, Ohio.
Yes, go ahead, brother.
Oh, okay. All right. My question for Mr. Fuller is this. He has always said a definition of justice and about those who need the most constructive help. My question for Mr. Fuller, in the system of white supremacy, is it safe to assume that all non-black people, all the prisoners, automatically would need the most help? Would there ever be a situation where the prison and the warden and the guards would need more help than the prisoners?
So would it be safe to assume that in a system of justice, if it's a group of people, the people that you would identify to help with the most would be the non-white people automatically because they're the prisoners?
Absolutely. In the system of white supremacy, the non-white people are the planet need the most help automatically. You always start with the people that need the most help. And if you're going to have justice, but in the process, you have to guarantee that no one is mistreated. Now, that's walking a pretty thin tightrope. But the presumption is it can be done. Lots of things that people say can't be done, that can be done. Otherwise, there's no point in talking about justice. Just come to the conclusion that to have justice is totally impossible. And some people, some writers, scholars have said that. Justice is impossible. You can't achieve justice. You can't have a world where nobody's being mistreated. You just can't, it can't be done. But lots of things that people say it can't be done have been done. That's been proven down through the ages. Lots of things that people said was absolutely impossible. Those things have been done. So the codified ideology is any problem that people make, people can solve. The problem of racism was made by people, so that problem can't be solved. And people also produce a thing called non-justice. So if people produce that, you can have a world of justice. You can have a world of justice, and you can do it in record time. It doesn't have to be a long, drawn-out affair, like the white supremacists like to tell black people. Well, it takes time. It takes, another 5,000 years maybe. We might get it like it ought to be, or somewhat. It'll be a little shaky, and black people get in that type of thinking. One of these days, moaning and groaning, we'll just slowly, step by step, painful step, slogging through the mud, down a dirt road, pulling rocks and whatnot, and then maybe one of these days we'll see sweet Beulah land here on Earth, when it can be done in 15 minutes. We got to get out of that type of mentality. That slow drag. Mm-hmm. We've been taught that. Mm-hmm. The victims of racism have been taught that. And we have adopted it. We even sing songs that talk about struggle. Struggle? We're supposed to be going at jet speed, not struggling. It's just a matter of having determination and pushing the correct buttons.
Okay.
This is, 2019. We shouldn't even be having this conversation. We shouldn't even know what a conversation like this is like.
Okay. Here is a question from the Gmails from Brother Reeves. He asked this, I guess this is a series of short questions. He says, Mr. Fuller, how do you respond to white people that deny there is a system of white supremacy? Is that as hard to prove as accusing someone of being a racist? And what follow-up question would you ask? Do you debate them or simply accept their answer and walk away?
Well, if you give an example, if a white person says to me, or anybody says to me, that white supremacy doesn't exist, this conversation is over.
Period.
Because the premise is that it does exist. So there's nothing else to discuss. I'm going to act on the premise that it does exist. Now that white person or whomever it is can act on whatever they think the premise is. Because I am duty bound to be against racism and for justice. And if you say non-justice doesn't exist, that everything is just, that nobody's being mistreated, if you take that position, that's not a debate. Not with me. as a victim of non-justice, as a victim of racism, there's nothing else for me to say. What else is it to say if that person has come to that conclusion? Now, if the person wants to discuss it and go into detail, I'm willing to do that at any time and all the times, which is what I do. If a person says, well, I could be incorrect, so let's talk about it.
Okay.
So we can talk, all right? But if the person says, now, I'm going into this discussion on the basis of I'm not going to budge an inch. Racism doesn't exist. And what you're talking about, buddy, doesn't make sense. And I'm not accepting it. There's no such thing as any white supremacy. So I'm not changing from that. Okay, well, I will talk to you, sir, when you change from that, because there's nothing else to discuss.
Okay, so then that answers the last part when he said, do you debate them or simply accept their answer and walk away? You just walk away because, as you said in the beginning...
Well, you tell the person.
Yeah.
You're always courteous. You tell the person, well, there's nothing else for me to say.
Right.
I've already taken a position. This is a position. I'm not budging from that position, and apparently you're not budging from yours. So what you're telling me is basically that it quite possibly, I'm duty bound to suspect this, that you are racist, sir. Of course, I would suspect that anyway.
Okay.
So that means, you're taking a position of an enemy, my enemy, based on my color. You think that you have a blank check to mistreat me on the basis of my skin color. That's your criteria, and I'm taking a position that you don't.
Okay.
And so therefore I'm supposed to be codifying myself as best I can to eliminate your position, period.
All right. Quickly, because we're almost up against a break, but he asks this, based on what you just said, he said, is that as hard to prove as accusing someone as being racist?
Oh, you never accuse anybody of being racist.
Okay.
No victim of racism ever accuses anybody of being racist. You only say, according to the code, I suspect you could be one. Why? Because I have no reason to suspect otherwise. In a system of white supremacy, if you're classified as white, you could be a white supremacist, since there is, as far as I know. Now, I don't know everything, but somebody might have a master list of every white person on the planet who is indeed a verified racist. There might be a list. I haven't heard of any such list. If I heard of that list, I would like to gain access to it.
Yes.
So anytime I'm talking to a white person, I would just go down the list. I would just hit the buttons on the computer, go down the list. Their name is not on the racist list. So I would say, oh, this is Mrs. Schumann, and her name is, say, Helen Schumann, and she's a white lady. All right. I'll say, oh, Ms. Schumann, your name is not on the racist list.
Excuse me,
Mr. been cleared.
Okay, excuse me, Mr. Fuller, for the interruption, but they're telling me I have to go to break. So, on the compensatory concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. Today's discussion, January the 23rd, 2019, is the counter-racist codified response to the government shutdown. We're trying to get to that. We are at least efforting. We are having Mr. Fuller address that particular question, and as you noticed, as he always does, all of his answers are stated in a codified response. So this is nothing new for him, which is the way that we should be thinking, because he indicated in the first segment that when we wake up in the morning, that is what we should be thinking about, or asking this question: has the problem of racism been solved? And if the answer is no, then this is what we have to do, and there's a code to that. Before we get to the phone call, Victor Palmer, this is your opportunity to call in. You did ask me, so you can call in 1-877-932-9766. Aisha, if that's the correct pronunciation, excuse me. Your question is forthcoming in Homeschool 257. We got you on deck, okay? So just hang on, we'll try to get to you. But before we do, we're going to take a phone call. Okay, caller, you're on with Mr. Fuller. What is your question?
All right, Mr. Fuller, I'd like to ask a question with a short follow-up, if you don't mind.
Yes, sir. Go right ahead. All questions are valid.
Okay. Now, what is your codified response to a victim of white supremacy that understands that they are a victim, but they have sexual contact with white people? And you say, sometimes about the slave that might get the extra cornbread, or the one that gets, to stay in the house. They may have done favors for those privileges or whatever. So what is your codified take on a slave understanding that there's a system, understanding that they're victims, but they still have sexual contact with white people for benefits?
Oh, we all do. We all have contact with the white supremacists for benefits because we are prisoners of war. So if you're a victim of white supremacy, a non-white person anywhere on the planet, any time of day or night, you are a prisoner of war. You were born in prison. So therefore, if you get some cornbread, or if you have a weakness for a white person sexually and all like that, that goes with the territory because you're a prisoner. So what you say about it is just that. Prisoners of war act like prisoners of war. That's why we have to get rid of the system of racism, because it is what it is. We'll remain this way. Our existence doesn't really mean anything. We say Black Lives Matter and all like that. Matter in what context? See, when this is an excellent statement to make, but then that calls for a lot of in-depth discussion. How do Black Lives matter? And what do they matter for? In order to accomplish what? What makes a black life matter? See, it might be 1,000 questions right behind that one statement. I understand a couple of black ladies coined the phrase, but if you're going to discuss that, that calls for maybe 20 questions, maybe 30 questions, maybe 3,000 questions. Matter how, when, where, in what context, as compared to what, as compared to whom, in what area of activity. So in answer to the question, oh yes, what's your response to it? That's to be expected. That's the response. Anytime a black person does anything in the system of white supremacy, whether it's correct or incorrect, it just is what it is. You're still a prisoner of war. See, this is why it's so imperative to just concentrate on one thing, not pecking around the edges of the system of racism like it's supposed to exist forever. That's what we have been doing as victims of racism. No, it is a system of government that should never have existed in the first place. So you always look at it like that. You don't look at it any other way. Something that never should have existed at all. Not for one fraction of a second. No one is supposed to be mistreated because of the color of the skin. That is insane.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That is super insanity.
What is your second? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Fuller.
People shouldn't be mistreated for any reason. But I mean, that is one of the most shallow reasons you can, that's like saying a person that has one fingernail longer than the other is eligible to be mistreated. It's in the same context. The color of the skin makes you eligible to be mistreated. The fact that this has lasted so long, an idea like that shouldn't have taken off for even a fraction of a second. That should have been laughable. For the first person to even mention that. But it's no joke.
No joke.
And it has become the most powerful government that the world has ever seen, called the system of white supremacy, where every non-white person is made by, even before birth, to be eligible for mistreatment in particular, and if it fits the occasion to satisfy a person who's classified as white, anybody who's non-white can mistreat another non-white person. That's the whole racist doctrine. So therefore, in a capsule, you should expect anything to happen that shouldn't happen in the system of white supremacy to a non-white person.
What's your second question, or rather a follow-up question, sir?
So, other than destruction, how can victims of white supremacy or racism take apart a system that they don't have the tools to take apart with or the know-how? Other than destroying the system, like with violence or just blowing it up or whatever, how does a victim take apart something that someone else put together or another group put together without the proper tools and the know-how?
Okay. We're doing it now, just by discussions such as this. In other words, in order to take something apart, you have to know how it's put together. See, what has been a huge problem among black people, particularly in the Northwestern Hemisphere and presumably throughout the entire world, is that we pay strict attention to each other. We wake up in the morning and go to bed at night thinking about other black people. We're trained that way. We don't pay attention to anything else except when we're forced to. If we stop and think about it, that is a huge weakness. When you're a prisoner of war, you don't go around the prison yard spending your entire existence studying other prisoners. You're not going to learn anything doing that. You study the prison that you are in and who's running it. This is how you codify. Counter-racists codify.
Yes.
You get out of prison. Counter prison.
Mm-hmm.
This is how you counter the prison system.
Mm-hmm.
You can't learn nothing by studying other prisoners.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we do.
That's what Andy Dufresne did in the movie Shawshank Redemption. He studied what was going on.
He studied the prison that he was in. He didn't pay a whole lot of attention to the activities of the other prisoners.
Yes.
Even though the other prisoners were abusing him and all like that, he tried to think beyond that.
Yes.
He studied the warden.
Yes.
He got access to the warden's office.
Yes, he did.
All right? He systematically started thinking of doing things like, hey, I can improve the level of intelligence of the other prisoners, all of them, by not opting for a pool table, which is what some of them were thinking about asking for.
Yeah.
I'm going to get a library in here. And in this library, you can go in and you can study a lot of things. Like he went into the library that he had made through the warden's office, and he was doing what? Studying rock formations.
Yes, yes.
And by studying rock formations, he found out the materials that the prison was made out of.
Mm-hmm.
All right? And in studying that, he found that the prison was probably made out of inferior materials, the walls. And this is how he was able to build out. A lot of people may have missed that lesson.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the lessons in Shawshank Redemption.
Yes, sir.
See, he was always thinking about the environment that he was in.
Yes, sir.
And how he got in that environment. And also, more than anything, so once he was in it, he knew he wasn't going to get out of it except to figure out a way to get out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where, in answer to the caller's questions, that's what we're supposed to be doing all the time. Codifying every move we make by studying what? Our entire environment.
Yes.
And where we fit into it.
So before we go to break,
And
Mr.
we can't do that by just looking forward to getting together with some other black people and having what we call a banjo time.
Yes.
Which is what we basically do. We look forward to that more than anything else. Get together, go down by the riverside, turn some flips, pound on some banjos, beat some drums, and fall down exhausted, and until Master comes along and says, okay, party's over, All right, all you slaves get back to work.
So, Mr. Fuller, would you say, before we go to break here, Andy Dufresne's codified response to what was happening is those 4 questions that you always have, or have you been suggesting that we ask? What do you want to do? How do you want to do it? When do you want to do it? And what is the expected constructive result of that?
No, the questions are, what do you want to do?
Yes, okay.
Ask yourself that every day when you get up. What do you want to do? And then the next one is, why do you want to do it? That's very important. Underline why. Why do you want to do this thing that you want to do? You know what you want to do. Why do you want to do it? And then the third thing is, how do you plan to do it? Because if you're going to do something and you got a reason for doing it, well, you should have a plan. Whether it's constructive or non-constructive, you should have a plan. Why? Because if you don't have a plan, it's likely not to work. So you sit down and map out a plan. But you first have to know what it is you want to do. A lot of people can't even answer the first question. Oh, man, I just do something. It's whatever people tell me to do. That's how I live my life. Well, that's all it is to it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Do something. Don't make no difference what it is. And see, that's a model prisoner in the system of white supremacy. Just drift along, go out in the prison yard, walk around, walk over here and talk to this prisoner about a whole lot of nothing. And then you get tired of that, and so you walk over there to the other prisoner and talk about a whole lot of nothing, and get tired of that, and then go back to the prison cell and do the same thing over and over again for the next 2,000 years, if you're breathing that long.
Okay.
Unlike Andy Dufresne, who from day one started figuring out, how am I going to get out of this mess that I'm in?
Okay, so now before we go to break, so I can get, because I did write this down, before we go to break here, get this straight. You got to ask the what, the why, the how,
and the last one is, the fourth one, what do you expect the constructive result to be? Now, these are in the textbook for victims of racism.
Which is why, I'm glad you said that, which is why we have to usher in this. TalkTomeAtRadio.com, we go where you go, download the TalkTomeAtRadio.com app to your cell or to your tablet. That's your radio the way it should be heard. My name is Mr. Bobby. I am the co-host of the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. And our topic today for January the 23rd, 2019 is the counter-racist codified response to the government shutdown. Of course, Mr. Fuller has been answering or suggesting to the questions that have come up. But it is at this particular time, since he mentioned it just a moment ago, about it's in the book, this is the time that we have selected that Mr. Fuller speak briefly about his publication. Mr. Fuller, go ahead, please.
You can get the book by going to producejustice.com. That's producejustice.com. And what you'll see on the screen is a textbook workbook for victims of white supremacy. And the book is addressed to the individual person who perceives him or herself to be victims of the system of white supremacy, which the textbook itself says is the only government on the planet worthy of the name government. And that's the name of the government. It doesn't have any other name except the system of white supremacy. You can't call it America or China or Western civilization or anything like that. When you say world government and say the system of white supremacy, that erases all so-called lines on the maps. And you're stuck with what? Racial classifications of people. Once you erase all the lines on the maps, then how are you going to classify what's going on? 3 classifications. White people, non-white people, and white supremacists. And the white supremacists are the most powerful people on the planet that has ever been existed people who have ever existed on this planet in the most powerful position in all of recorded history. Those white people who believe in and who practice the system of white supremacy. That doesn't say all white people. That's why you have those three classifications according to counter-racist science, according to the counter-racist code. White, non-white, that includes all black, brown, red, yellow, and these are just shades of black, by the way. All color, people of color, are shades of black. Brown is a shade of black. Yellow is a shade of black. Tan is a shade of black. Beige is a shade of black. So that comes under the non-white umbrella, with black being basic. Most of the universe is black. And according to most scholars, the original people of the planet were people with very, very dark skins, which were sometimes called black and or brown. So you have black being basic, and everything from that is black, starting with black, then brown, red, if you want to use the term red. Some people say that that's not really a color of a person's skin, but we sometimes say that it looks reddish, all right? And then you have beige, tan, yellow, etc., etc., etc. But white is the absence of color, according to racial terms. Since you say colored people, then you say, well, if you're not a person of color, then you are a person with non-color, which is white. And then that person makes the decision, that person who is classified as white. See, making you, just because you're white doesn't say you're a white supremacist. That's a choice that a white person makes. That's why you have, according to the textbook for victims, those three classifications, not but three. Now, according to some census, a census in the Northwestern Hemisphere, I think the last one was 21 classifications. But none of these classifications make sense to me. You can look at them yourself and see, first of all, what are they for? What are these classifications for? Why classify people by race in the first place unless you have some type of agenda? And what is that agenda? Okay? And then if you notice in the Northwestern Hemisphere, white is at the top. Whereas if you're going to take it in alphabetical order, Afro-American or Asian or something along that order would be at the top if you're talking about alphabetical order, like most things are. But there's a reason why white is at the top when you take a census. And it doesn't have anything to do with the number of, the population or anything like that, I don't think. So I won't digress, but I just wanted to throw that in there because that's what this book is about, straightening out this mess called racism, which never should have existed in the first place. Nobody should ever be thinking about even making a race of people. Racing against what? In order to accomplish what? These are the questions that the book raises. And coming up with answers that a victim of racism is supposed to have. All right? Not all the answers, but trying to answer most of the things that will do what? Replace the system of racism with the system of justice. And that's what the book is addressed to. And you can get it by going to producejustice.com. And also there's a word guide to help you along that way. That's in addition to the basic book. producejustice.com.
All righty. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to take that call on the other side of the break because we don't have enough time. We're up against the break. So, caller, just hang on there. Mr. Fuller, you referred to color, particularly the red. Biblically, I think the Edomites were called the red people or reddish type of people, and it could be that may have been, or could have been, or should be coming out of the black-skinned people, but you were correct in your assessment. Okay, what have we learned today so far? Well, we've learned particularly got to have a plan in a codified way. Mr. Fuller explained the what, the why, the how, and the last one, the expected result, which he said it is in the book, and that is one of the many reasons why you need to get this book. Now, he didn't tell me to say anything about the book, and I don't get any monies from the book, but that information is in the book, and as he had mentioned, this is suggestions on what to do, and all our responses should be codified. He also mentioned that when you wake up in the morning, you have to ask yourself this one particular question. And Mr. Fuller, what was that question that we have to or should be asking ourselves in the morning?
Well, you ask yourself, really, what is your position in this world? What are you born for? You're born to solve problems. So what's the biggest problem on the planet among people? That you can't solve that. If you don't solve that problem, you can't solve any other problem. Anything that you set out to, problem you set out to solve, say, in any area of activity, economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. If you are a person classified as non-white, black, brown, red, yellow, etc., you have that problem in all of these areas of activity, and the biggest problem in all of these areas of activity, from economics to war, is the system of white supremacy. It dominates every move that you make, everything you plan to do.
Okay.
You plan to solve any problem in any of these areas of activity, you're going to run smack into racism.
All righty. With that, we'll see you in the second hour. TalkTainMenRadio.com, the world's greatest radio, the way it should be heard. We'll see you in the next hour.
Thanks for listening to The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio.
The most important question in all racial matters is why. One should always ask it.
Radio, the way it should be heard.
You've got the power. The world's greatest radio. TalkTainmentRadio.com. Talktainment Radio, worldwide sound. Talktainmentradio.com. We give you a reason to come. The world's greatest radio. We give you a reason to stay. Radio, the way it should be heard. You got the power.
The views and opinions expressed are those of the host and guest and not necessarily those of TalkTainmentRadio.com, the management, the staff, or K&E World Network, LLC.
This is The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio. Radio, the way it should be heard. And now, Mr. Neely Fuller.
If you do not understand white supremacy, which is racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. Only confuse you. Only confuse you.
Welcome to the second hour of The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com. We go where you go, and we call ourselves the world's greatest radio. You right now are now in touch with The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., and I am the co-host, Mr. Bobby, and this is Radio the Way It Should Be Heard. We want you to get in contact with the show, and you can do so by calling 1-877-932-9766. You can also see and hear the show by going to the YouTube channel, typing in the word Talktainment, and then you type into the word radio, and then scroll down to where it says Talktainment number 2, and hit the, you're right there, hit the subscribe and like button while you're there. If you want to Gmail me, and I can't promise you for sure that I will read it today, I'm efforting to do that. 7 Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, at gmail.com. You can hear the entire program also by going to facebook.com/Talktainment. And then lastly, we want you to do this. Go to the TalkTainmentRadio.com homepage and click on Listen Live. Bam! You're right there. And hit the subscribe and like button there. Our topic today for January the 23rd, 2019 is the counter-racist codified response to the government shutdown. Trust me, we've been trying to get there, but we have to take the phone calls and then Gmails too. With that being said, we are going to go to the phone lines and caller. You are now on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead, please.
Yes, Mr. Fuller. If I heard you correctly, you said that racism, white supremacy, they always make moves that's going to strengthen racism, white supremacy. And with Kamala Harris deciding to run for president, I Googled her family yesterday and found that her husband is a white man. Now, if the Electoral College decides to allow her to become president of the United States, this is what I see, and I want to get your opinion on it, that they will put a black face as president to pretty much try to calm America down, but then at the same time, with her husband being a white man, we have what I perceive is that them putting her, the perception is that this is a white man that can put her in her place or convince her covertly or overtly or without her knowledge to support racism, white supremacy, and I wanted to get your input on that.
Well, like I said, the criteria according to the code is you can look at all these things and take note of it, take mental note, without making any comment. You just simply say, does racism exist? Or does it not exist? And if it still exists, every white person is suspect in keeping it in operation, because that's what it takes. It takes the majority of the white people of this planet to keep racism operating. Now, who the racists are, you can just blanket, just make blanket remarks about that and just simply say they are who they are. We don't know who they are. I don't know who they are. Nobody points them out to me. And as long as this is the case, and you still have a system of white supremacy, which is the world government, then you say the white supremacists are running everything. I don't care how many black people are sitting behind a desk making speeches or coming to a podium or wearing fine clothes or riding around in limousines or have a certain title. You don't pay any attention to that at all. This is 2019. That doesn't mean anything. The only thing that means anything is that do you still have racism in operation as the dominant government of this planet, or don't you have? One way or another. And if the answer is yes, all of that people who gets elected to this and who's holding this position and who has a title that's got a position that has 15 titles to it matters not one iota of anything. Does racism exist or doesn't it? Is it the dominant government on the planet or is it not? And if it's not, what is the dominant government on the planet? See, that's how you do the equation, mathematically. That's how you come to the logic. Some people will say, oh, racism isn't the dominant government of the planet. I mean, no, white supremacy, that ain't the dominant government. You got white supremacists, but that's minor. I mean, the real government is something else. Something else like what? Something else like what? That's the question. And as long as you can't come up with that something else and prove it by evidence, white supremacy is the government, and it doesn't make any difference which black person is doing what on any given Wednesday or Thursday or Sunday. That doesn't matter at all. You either have it or you don't. 2019, maybe 7,000 years ago, we could look at it a different way, or whenever racism began. But in 2019, we shouldn't be looking at it like what black person has what position. We say, does racism exist or doesn't it? That's the only thing you go by. You don't do it by increments. You don't get the racists do not get credit for putting a black person, say, 2 feet from the goal line. The question is, did you make the goal line? Which means, does racism still exist? That's the only question. You wake up in the morning and go to bed at night, and if it still exists, your position should be, like I said at the beginning of this program, nothing has been done. No progress has been made at all. That's the only way to look at it in 2019. Then, what does this do when you have that type of mentality? When you say no progress has been made? None. With everything that everybody's done, no progress has been made at all. When you look at it like that, then that gives you the incentive to do what? More than you're already doing. Otherwise, you would take that, well, maybe if we can get 5 more black people with a position and a title, I mean, running a grocery store in a particular town, in a particular city, somewhere on the planet, and we all line up and applaud because black people are supposed to be the most celebratory people on earth, running on empty. But we celebrate everything. We take 2 baby steps, and that calls for 15 years of celebration. We need to stop that completely. In fact, we are not eligible to celebrate anything because celebration time comes when racism ends. That should be the codified procedure. Black people are not known for celebrating anything. We don't recognize a celebration as being worth anything. Hand clapping and celebrating and turning flips and saying Jubilee is here, Hallelujah is here. No. We haven't made any progress. We've been standing on zero like forever. That should be our position. And we're going from 0 to 100, if 100 is the limit. Everything in between doesn't count. Nothing in between. 50-yard line means absolutely nothing. 75-yard line, if you compare it to football, means nothing. And if you compare it to basketball, dribbling down the court, looking cute, means absolutely nothing. Every time you touch that ball, it's a slam dunk. Otherwise, you got no business on the court.
Okay, thank you, caller, for your call. Okay, let's see here. Let's do this here. If I get the right page here, and then we can get to it. Okay, here we go. Alrighty. I believe it's Aisha, and if I'm wrong on that, pardon me. She asked this question, Mr. Fuller. She says, now remember, this is we're talking about the subject today, the counter-racist codified response to the government shutdown. But she asked this, Mr. Fuller, when 2 people are having a conversation, is there ever a time when it is okay to interrupt one another while speaking?
Every time okay to do what?
She said, when 2 people are having a conversation, is there ever a time when it is okay to interrupt one another while speaking.
I still didn't get that last two words.
She said, is it
to what?
To interrupt.
Interrupt?
Yes.
No. And I have done that. I have interrupted people on occasion, and that is an absolute no-no. You don't interrupt. You wait until the person says whatever the person has to say. That's just courtesy, and that is what you call constructive conversation. When you interrupt, you're not having a constructive conversation. And every conversation that a black person is involved in should be a conversation, and that conversation should be constructive. Otherwise, it's really not conversation. It's really not communication. And black people should, this is January of 2019, we should say, you should set as your goal, one of your goals. Never have an argument with anybody. There's a difference between an argument and a conversation. Now, what's the difference? A conversation is designed to come to a constructive conclusion. An argument is just that. It's a whole lot of fumes and smoke and yelling and name-calling maybe. No, none of that. And if you find yourself drawn into that, what you do is say, I will talk to you at some other time. That's the codified procedure. Sir, ma'am, it looks like we are moving from a conversation to an argument. That's never supposed to happen. Conversations are supposed to lead to something constructive. You don't go down the road of something non-constructive. And when it looks like this back and forth, it's getting to be non-constructive, you say, sir, ma'am, I will talk to you at some other time. And then you dismiss yourself. If you don't do it physically, you dismiss yourself from saying anything else, because that's your final statement at this particular time. Sir, ma'am, I will talk to you at some other time. Now, they can continue talking, but you don't say anything else. Why? Because you don't want to argue. Arguments don't produce anything. Conversation does.
Okay. TalkTainmentRadio.com is a 24/7 no-charge worldwide broadcasting facility with hosts delivering on various topics such as news, lifestyle, sports, law, health, wellness, religion, and politics. Now here's one that I'm going to, if there's such a word as reshare, but I did this in the first hour, and all I'm saying is there's a show that Talktainment Radio produces, and it is called The Quay Morgan Show. Okay, in the vernacular of some people, it is completely off the chain. It is that good. Well, to some people. Anyway, it is that good. Very informative. She does her research in whatever subject that she is discussing, and I think that you may find it informative and entertaining. That and other shows that we have here at Talktainment Radio, and trust me on this one, we have the exclusive. Check it out. Go to the TalkTainmentRadio.com homepage and look under programs, and there is a list of all the programs that Talktainment Radio has, and it continues to expand. TalkTainmentRadio.com, the way radio should be heard. My name is Mr. Bobby. I am the co-host on The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., and our subject today, January the 23rd, 2019, is the counter-racist codified response to the government shutdown, which we've actually been trying to get to. I have Mr. Fuller's thoughts on that since the beginning of the show, but we also answer phone calls and do Gmails. And speaking of phone calls, we have a phone call right now. Caller, you're on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead, please.
Hello, everyone.
Yes, sir, you're on. Go ahead.
Hello. Yeah. Okay, so here's my question. I live in a multicultural city, and whenever stats that indicate racial bias are published, black people often fare much worse than any other groups. I'm just going to list a little something that was done recently in my city. It says statistics show that black people specifically black men, were overrepresented in everything from investigations into use of force and sexual assault by police to inappropriate or unjustified searches and charges. Stats never, in my city, a very multicultural city, doesn't show any racial bias against other groups like Chinese or East Indians. And there's no, for example, there's no activism from these groups. I never heard of a Chinese Lives Matter group. And even many of your examples, Mr. Fuller, are when you talk about racism, you use the word black people. So my question is that why is this? The other groups seem to go through life, even though they are non-white, and in this non-white group, they appear to go. Their reality is nothing close to the reality of black people in Western society. And I don't know if grouping us all together is helping black people get out of racism.
So the question is, why is this?
Why is it like this? And is it then, if they hardly seem to, well, racism doesn't appear to be a reality in their life day to day like it is with black people, is it beneficial for us to group all non-white people together, especially where their experience is much closer to the white people's experience than the black people's experience, but we're all grouped in the same non-white group?
Yes. According to the code, yes. All victims of racism are functionally equal victims, even though physically you might find one victim. This is even true among black people, more comfortable, because that's basically what you're talking about. Comfort, that one word, comfort. Well, even if you look at certain individuals, you will find one black person who is in a more comfortable position than another black person. Not all black people on the planet are uncomfortable equally, but they are all classified as prisoners of war. So it's the same way with the different shades of black. Black people, brown people, yellow people, and you're correct that it seems like some non-white people are better off than others, or don't have the same degree of a problem that others have. And this is true. But they all come under the system of white supremacy, and here's the bottom line. The white supremacists determine what your status is going to be. So the white supremacists will say, well, I got some people here that I call East Indians, all right? So I'm going to position them, because I teach them all. They don't know nothing except what I teach them, all right? So I'll teach them to run this type of business, run that type of business, and all like that. And I'll allow them to do that. And I will position the places where they will be allowed to do it. They're not going to be allowed to do it anywhere. They're going to be allowed to do it where I assign on this planet. Now, I'm talking about not neighborhoods, or so-called multicultural, which there's a problem with that term, too, because all cultures are all cultures have different, culture is nothing but what you're doing at the time that you're doing it. So when you say multicultural, every person is multicultural, because every person does different things from one minute to the next. You pick up a pot or a pan, or you drive down a street. So your culture, when you're driving a car, is car driving culture. Doesn't make any difference who's driving the car. That's your culture at the time you're doing it. But the white supremacists say, they put this thing in black people's minds, or non-white people's minds, about culture is something very mysterious, and only, it's something you put in a green box, and you hide it in a closet somewhere. And every now and then somebody goes and discovers, oh, I found East Indian culture, or I found black culture. This is black culture. I found it in this green box in the closet. I found it up under the Great Pyramid. Culture is nothing but what you do at the time that you're doing it. If you are participating in a drive-by shooting in New Delhi, India, and you are called an Indian, in New Delhi and you are participating in a drive-by shooting, drive-by shootings is East Indian culture. If that's what that East Indian that's doing it is doing it at that time. And that's all that it is, and nothing else. Doesn't make any difference what he has for breakfast that morning, and they say that's East Indian food. That's just food.
Okay. Wow. All right, let's go to the Gmail. This is from Homeschool257. Good rising, Mr. Fuller. My question for you is this. How do you keep from having an emotional response every time a racist and or suspected racist tries to induce one? And how do you teach your children how to rein in their emotions, especially teenagers?
Oh, controlling your emotions comes from attaching your emotions to logic. And that applies to everybody. That doesn't have anything to do with age. You use logic. Your emotions are supposed to lead you to logic. Now, the white supremacists, once they capture people, the one thing that they tell black people is that you can have all the emotions you want. You can be as emotional as you want. Black people are very emotional. Black people, they get mad in a minute and get happy in a minute, and then they get sad in a minute, and it is all over the place. Just a bundle of emotions. But a white person is steady. Why is that white person steady? For the most part. The average white person is much steadier than a black person. Why? What makes that white person steady? Because he or she is white? No. Because he or she has been trained to attach emotions to logic. Meaning, always thinking about outcome. Not what you're doing at the moment, but what the result is going to be of what you're doing. And so it takes a white person to do that in the system of white supremacy. But we were trained black people to only have emotions. Don't attach their emotions to logic at all. They can have one or the other. They can have logic without emotion, which means they won't have any driving force if you have that, because emotions serve a purpose. Okay? That's why emotions were invented. But emotions are supposed to be always attached to logic. And what is logic? Cause and effect. Being able to use your emotions in such a way that you know what the outcome is going to be. You already know that, by which, you got this drive, but you're going to latch on. You're going to use your drive to latch on to logic.
Okay.
So you can be emotional about sitting at the wheel of a car, and you got all this emotion, and the emotion tells you to step on that gas, but you don't have your hands on the wheel. See, now that's where the logic comes in.
Okay.
You got to have a steering mechanism for all of that power, all that emotions. And black people are trained by the white supremacists to have no steering mechanism for anything that we say and do. That's why we usually mess up everything that we touch.
Wow. Okay. All right, caller, you got 4 minutes, so go ahead and ask your question for Mr. Fuller.
Yes, can you hear me?
You got 4 minutes. Go ahead.
Okay. Hey, how you doing, guys? So I wanted to ask Mr. Fuller about materialism. I noticed that especially blacks we put way too much value on like clothes with a name on it, shoes with a name on it, cars with a name on it. So I was thinking that we need to just buy more plain things, and what I mean by that is maybe just like a plain T-shirt, a plain pair of shoes, a plain pair of pants, until we can get over this materialism. So I was wondering, Mr. Fuller, when you shop, do you avoid, say, the big names like Ralph Lauren and Tommy Hilfiger and names like that, because our minds are so destroyed?
Mr. Fuller?
The code says always be mathematical in what you do in order to produce a constructive result. And that comes to anything that you do. That's under economics. Economics is how you use your time and your energy. And that will also take in whatever things you touch. Time and energy. How do you use your time and energy? That's the most important things that you have. So in order to use your time and energy in an efficient manner, you just have those things that will support the most constructive things that you do in the use of your time and energy. So how many clothes do you need to use the time and energy that you need to do the most constructive things? How many vehicles do you need? What type of vehicle, if you need a vehicle at all right? And just anything that will get the job done in the most constructive manner. That's it. And since you mentioned clothes, even in style, some years ago, decades ago, someone asked me about what do you say when someone says something about the style of clothes you're wearing, because they're saying that it's out of style or something like that. But you are wearing it because it does what you want those clothes to do. I mean, it's adequate, it's neat, as the code says, that the clothes have to be adequate, or they should be for the weather and whatnot, and for appearance, and neat for appearance, just neat enough. I mean, that you don't attract undue attention or hostile attention where somebody wants to do harm to you or something like that. And that's adequate all the time if you're talking about clothes. And you can say your clothes are always in style. If you start talking about style, your clothes, and you can say this, because I said this to an audience once. I said, what can you say when someone is kind of, making snide remarks about something you're wearing?
Okay, I'm sorry, Mr. Fuller. I really am, but they're telling me I gotta take the break. I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
We can
I'd like to get back to this one.
Yeah, we'll get back to that one.
Now, I was talking about clothing and people criticizing, particularly among young people. Somebody walks up and says, hey, man, what you doing with them shoes on, man? You better get you some real shoes. And talking about maybe the logo on the shoes or the lack of one, or it's not a certain symbol that's on the shoe, or it's not a certain name that's on the shoe. And or if they're saying something about your clothing, you can always say, and one codified response is, my clothes, sir, are always appropriate for the type of people that I come in contact with.
Okay.
And just leave it right there.
Leave it there.
And then if somebody starts saying something about your style, they'll say your clothes are out of style. You'll say, well, I disagree with your statement. That's your assessment, but I'm saying it's impossible for my clothing to be out of style. And you can say that to anybody. It's impossible for these clothes that I'm wearing to be out of style. That's impossible. And why is it impossible? Talking about logic now. It's impossible because you are wearing them. That's why. They're out of style when you take them off. When you put them back on, they're in style. The very fact that you got them on makes those clothes that you're wearing in style. And if somebody wants to keep up with the styles, follow you around because you make the style. You don't let anybody make the style for you. My clothing are always appropriate for the type of people I come in contact with.
All right.
And just leave it there.
Leave it there.
And don't say anything else. My clothes are always appropriate for the type of people I come in contact with.
Okay. You got it. Okay.
Now, if you got a problem with my clothes, don't come in contact with me. All right.
Okay. We'll do that. Okay, caller. Now, keep in mind, we're trying to get Mr. Fuller to answer the question. The counter-racist codified response to the government. But what is your question, caller? Go ahead.
Yes. Why is it that us black people value buying products from white stores more so than buying products from a black store, even if it's the same
price or the same shirt or shoes, we tend to want to go to the white stores more.
Okay, Mr. Fuller?
That's always been. People have always gravitated toward the people who they say are their masters, or people that set the criteria for them. We just got rid of talking about shoes, whatnot. Some white person says these are the type of clothes you're supposed to have, this is the type of house you're supposed to have, this is the type of car that you're supposed to have, so you rush out to get it. Why? People always copy after their masters. People all down through history have always done that. Slaves do that. Slaves want to dress up, in hand-me-down clothes on the plantation from the master's house. And not to show off to the master, because you can't do that. A slave gets some clothes from the master and puts them on and struts around in front of the master. The slave knows that doesn't work very well. So what does the slave do? He gets that top hat, that bowler, or that top hat, that stovepipe hat, and then those shoes, and then that coat with the split up the back and whatnot. And what does that slave do? Rushes right down by the riverside and say, look what I got. I got the latest. Master give this to me. Ain't it pretty? Y'all envy me. I'm going to strut past you. Everybody line up and watch me strut past. That's always been. Mm-hmm. And that will remain with us as long as we have the mindset that we have to do what? Show off to each other. We got to get out of that. That is not supposed to be a life goal. Black people, that's why I use the prison analogy. Prisoners at break time out in the prison yard walking around showing off their prison uniforms to other prisoners. Now, is that a recipe for not being a prisoner? Is that a recipe for getting out of that situation and having a better world? The answer is no.
Okay.
So here's the whole thing in a nutshell. Stop doing anything to show off, because you don't have a grounds for showing off. Prisoners of war have no grounds for showing off anything, and that includes celebrating anything. They're not qualified.
Okay.
Can't show off. There's nobody to show off to that matters.
Alrighty. All right, now, Mr. Fuller, let's get to the question that we're supposed to be talking about. Is people are asking, what is the corner racist codified response to the government shutdown, Mr. Fuller?
Well, the government for black people, it depends on what we mean by shutdown. The system of white supremacy is alive and well. There is no government shutdown. They're just making adjustments to what they do, to the extent that the races has anything to do with it. And presuming that if it has anything to do with non-white people, all it is just the white supremacists saying, okay, I hired you to pay you a certain amount of money to do a number of things, and now I've decided you will either keep doing these things with no pay, or you will not be doing these things at all with no pay until I say that you'll get some pay. And that's all that it is. And they can do that at any time. And that's your response. Your response is always be prepared to be cut off from anything that's a benefit to you. But that's the codified position. And that's at any time and any place. Always think in terms of what if.
Okay.
If you're doing pretty well, while you're doing well, be like the squirrel. Put something away. Mm-hmm. Because if you are black on this planet, you better believe something awful is going to happen if you are in comfort right now. Always look forward to that day, which might be the next 15 minutes, when you are not in that comfortable situation.
All right. Now,
and always think that way, that something terrible is going to happen if you're doing well.
Okay. Now, is that the same response to the fact that President Trump has called for and is doing a government shutdown, period. Which he did. Which he said that he would do that, and he has done that. Is that the same type of counter-racist response, a codified response that we should have, what you just said?
We should have that response on a daily basis anyway.
Okay.
For the best of conditions.
Okay.
Always look for the disaster that's going to come around the corner, because most likely it is. If you're a person of color, I don't care how high you're riding, you could be slam dunked down to zero overnight. So don't think that you're in a permanent position in the system of white supremacy. Always think of yourself, if you're a person of color, as being in prison. And in prison, no matter how many ornaments you have in your prison cell, or how much food you're getting today, or how many privileges you have today, you're still in prison. And at any time, you can be thrown into solitary confinement out of that ivory tower that the warden has put you in on a temporary basis.
Okay.
Always look at it like that. It can be snatched away from you in a minute. Not in a long process. They can take it in a minute. And they don't have to answer to anybody when they do, because there's nobody to answer to.
Okay. Here's a question. What the previous caller just said concerning, businesses, in particular black brother and sister businesses. What about when, and then going to the white man supporting his business? The question came up. What about when the brothers or sisters asking for your support has a habit of not doing you good business, messing up or not providing the services or whatever they're doing, and turn you to go to the white man? What about that? How do you what is the codified response to that?
When a black person,
brother or sister that is operating a business selling the same or a similar product that the white man is selling, but you go anyway to the white man's store because the black man's store does not and has not fulfilled their fiduciary responsibility in terms of serving you the best product. So they force you to go to the white man. What is the codified response, compensatory response to that?
Well, you understand that he or she is in that position because that's where the white supremacists want that person to be. So if you're looking for a service, anytime you make a promise, you just have to keep your promise. That's all.
What if they don't?
If they don't, then you have to tell the person, well, you promised me you were going to do this. Now, part of the code is you don't make promises you don't keep. So if that black business person does not fulfill the promise, you just have to tell them. As a fellow prisoner, you said that you were going to do such and such a thing. You were going to see to it that I got a better. You work in the commissary. You were going to see to it that I got a better pillowcase and whatnot. And you promised me that that's what I was going to get. And that's not what you did. So, you didn't keep your promise. And I'm holding you to that you did not keep your promise. Don't promise anything you can't deliver, regardless of your status.
Now you do that without an argument, is that correct?
No, you do that without an argument. It shouldn't be an argument. You just say, well, I did promise you that, and I didn't fulfill the promise, so therefore you can just put me down as a person who didn't fulfill the promise that I made, and that's it. So I don't expect you to participate in supporting my business anymore because I do not keep my promises. That's it. I mean, hey, you make a promise, you keep it. Otherwise, don't make it. Don't say you're going to do something that you're not going to do.
Okay, we know that, but I'll put it this way. Okay, I have known of businesses, black businesses, that have not fulfilled that responsibility. As a matter of fact, tried to avoid you when they knew that they had done wrong purposely. misused you and made you, especially if you're losing, $15 or $2,000 and they're not doing right. That's kind of hard to walk away from, or even to not raise your voice because they did you wrong, and then you got to go to the white man to have them fix that.
Absolutely. That's why the code says what? Don't loan any black person anything that you cannot afford to lose, because chances are you're going to lose it.
Okay.
Here's what you do. Wherever you get things from, you steer that black person toward that source and see if they can get it from that source, which will be somebody white. Because there's one thing about black people. They'll see to it that they pay white folks. All right?
Yes, sir.
They'll see to it. They'll find a way to pay them white folks.
Yes.
Why? Because they know they better. All right? But
Yes,
they will look at you and say, well, you black just like I am, and you can't make me pay you, so ha, ha, ha. I mean, you can just whistle for your money. I mean, you shouldn't have given it to me in the first place. Now, that is exactly what a person told me years ago. A person, on a business deal, a black person actually told me that, and actually said, well, what are you going to do with the money if I give it back to you anyway? As if to say, if you had the money to loan me, it means you didn't need it. That was the message. And a lot of black people have that position toward another black person. If you loan me some money, it means you could afford to loan it to me, which means you did not need the money yourself. Therefore, I don't have to pay you back, because you don't really need the money. Because if you needed the money, you couldn't have loaned it to me. That's what you call ghetto reasoning.
I got it.
All right? But the way you get rid of that is, hey, the guy says, hey, Phil, I'd like to borrow, and I've given this illustration for decades. Phil, I'd like to borrow $500 from you. I say, well, I'm going to tell you what. I'm going to give you $100 on your problem. All right? And he said, man, I don't want you to give me nothing. I need $500. I don't need no $100. I need $500. No, I'm going to give you $100 because that's all that I can afford to give you.
Yes, sir.
Because if I give you $500, I'd be expecting $500 back. I'm not expecting this $100 back. All right?
Okay.
If I give you $500, I'm expecting it back, and I'm not likely to get it.
I like that. Counter-racist codified logic.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I got you. You are so right on that. And
Now, if you want to help that black person, you steer them to some white person.
Yeah.
And say, now, this white person is willing to loan you $500. Now, that's between you and him now.
Yeah.
I know that you'll find a way to see to it you get that money for him.
You have enlightened me. You have enlightened me, still learning. Okay, TalkTameRadio.com. We go where you go download the TalkTameRadio.com app to your cell or to your tablet. That's radio the way it should be heard. My name is Mr. Bobby. I'm the co-host on the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. We still have phone lines open if you wanted to participate. 1-877-932-9766. And our topic, and it's been a good one today, the counter-racist codified response to the government shutdown. But at this particular time, and we're about 5 minutes late, Mr. Fuller, you got to talk about your book, how we can get it, and any other details.
You can get the book by going to producejustice.com. Producejustice.com. And what will come up on the screen is a brief description of a book that I wrote, a revised expanded edition 2016, up from the 1984 edition, even though that's there too. Don't get the two books mixed up. You got the 1984 edition, which was the original, and the only reason it's there is because some people have requested the original. But the revised expanded edition has everything that the original is in for the most part, and it's revised and expanded because it has a lot more pages, has a lot more detailed information in it. That's the 2016 edition. And so you don't want to get those two editions confused. There's also a third volume there that's an addition, an addition to the revised expanded edition. And that's a compensatory counter-racist word guide, showing you how to use words, how not to use words, what questions to ask when other people use words, because most things are done, correct or incorrect, through the use of words. You use words every day. They are tools to get things done. That's what words are. Words are tools to get things done. So in order to get things done in the correct way, you want to use the correct words, the words that will help best to get it done. And you don't use other words. So you use some words in some situations, other words in other situations. You pick and choose your words carefully. Just don't say anything any kind of way. The system of white supremacy has a way of using words that give the white supremacists strength in everything that they do in the use of language. As a victim of racism, you want to know how to speak and write in a way that words work for you and not against you. And that's what the word guide is for,
yes,
as
sir.
an addition to the basic book.
Mm-hmm.
But you can get the volumes by going to producejustice.com. That's producejustice.com. And they are addressed to the individual person. They're not addressed to organizations. Organizations can use the volumes, but the book is tailored to what an individual person can do each and every day in all of the areas of activity that will best work for that person.
Okay. All righty. Today's topic has been January the 23rd, 2019, the counter-racist codified response to the government shutdown. And Mr. Fuller has given plenty of examples and responses to your questions, somewhat related to shutdown. And the main thing is being codified in our responses to everything, because we are in the prison system of white supremacy racism. One of the things that we've learned this particular hour is, and at least I know I've learned this, is only give away, in regards to business, only give away what you can afford to lose. I never thought about it like that, but it makes logical sense to do it, because if you can't afford to lose in this $500 or $2,000, whatever the case may be, then you really can't afford it. So you have to, as Mr. Fuller indicated, you may have to go to the white man to get whatever services that need to be done. Mr. Fuller, as we begin, we got about 2 minutes before we wrap this bad boy up today, and it's been a good one. Any other thing you want to add to that in regards to our responses in a codified way to this, since we're in this system of white supremacy racism?
Yeah, that's what I meant a while ago by saying in everything we have to have a code. Otherwise, one of the 10 stops is stop squabbling among ourselves and run into the racists to settle it. I mean, if we do that, we get all these squabbles down by the riverside and then run up to the big house and master, we ain't got sense enough to settle our disputes among ourselves. So you knock our heads together. I mean, we both standing here. You grab us both, knock our heads together, and tell us what you think. And then we'll go back and do it, because that's what we're used to. We can't settle anything ourselves. We got to always run to you, because you master, and you're the only one that got any sense. We never have sense enough to do anything on our own, and that's what codification is supposed to be about. That's why I say black people should cease right this minute participating in anything that sounds like it's going to lead to an argument. No contact, no conflict. In other words, if it looks like it's going to lead to an argument, you break contact right now. You just politely say, I'll talk to you some other time. Now, you didn't say that you're not going to talk to him anymore, but now it's not the time to continue this talk. Why? Because it's escalating into something that's going to get ugly, and then both of you are going to be standing there, hat in hand, scratching your heads, shuffling your feet, and saying, Master, please knock some sense into both of our heads.
All right, Mr. Fuller, I have to leave it there, but thank you, Mr. Fuller. Thank you, callers. Thank you, Gmailers. TalkTameAtRadio.com, the world's greatest radio the way it should be heard. We'll see you next week. Thank you so much for participating.
Thanks for listening to The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, heard exclusively on TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio.
The most important question in all racial matters is why. One should always ask it.
Radio, the way it should be heard.
You've got the power. The world's greatest radio. TalkTainmentRadio.com.